I'll be rolling down a hill like a snowball headed for hell.
Haven't posted for a couple weeks. Today's time to thought I'd get one up, and it's not like we've really missed anything, anyways. I mean, what's going on? It's not like the economy's been falling apart, banks been crashing, and we had a news report last week. I'll link to some of this stuff here, but there was some political party here in Alberta had a drag show at one of their meetings. There was a couple of I'll show the footage here, but yeah, there was a couple of kids that were handing money to the performer, and so I don't know, not my thing. Hey, you've had people cross-dressing ever since clothes were invented, so I mean, that's one thing, but I don't know. Some people might have a little issue when you start mixing kids into the whole thing, so not too sure that that's really appropriate, especially for a political party that wants to claim to be protecting children, and they also want to get their hands on the budget, so billions of dollars there. Not really. I don't think it's the way to go, but hey, that's not me. I'm not going to get political. And speaking of grooming, I walk by this dog park every day. So during the day there's a lot of people there, and I wonder, why doesn't somebody set up a mobile dog grooming operation just over in the parking lot here? Maybe somebody does. I just haven't seen it, so maybe I just haven't been aware of it until now. But yeah, probably not a bad idea. So yeah, it just got me thinking about that. Maybe that's an idea for, it's not my thing, but maybe you got somebody in your family that's looking for a business opportunity. Well, there's an idea. What else happened? Well, the petrodollar is pretty well dead. I think that Saudi Arabia has put the last nail in the coffin of that here this past week. So that is going to be interesting. We're really going to see what is going to happen here in the next few months and few years with that, because that is going to have some pretty big effects on the economy, on the global economy. The reason why, or a big reason why, the U.S. has been able to run such massive deficits, and up until recently, without huge inflationary impacts, is because the U.S. dollar has been required for global trade, primarily because of oil. The U.S. was up until basically this last week, the U.S. dollar was basically an oil-backed currency, and has been that way for about 50 years, ever since the various agreements that essentially formed the petrodollar happened back in, it was in the early 1970s. I don't know the exact date, but it was in the early 1970s, and it was essentially, some might call it a protection agreement, where the U.S. would protect Saudi Arabia's interests, and Saudi Arabia would in turn only accept U.S. dollars for oil, and also then they would also take whatever money they got and invest that back into U.S. treasuries. So that is pretty well done. Now, with less demand for U.S. dollars, people around the world, so we're talking major funds, major economies, they're going to be wondering, well, okay, we don't need to hold all these U.S. dollar reserves anymore to buy oil. Some of the talk is that a lot of that money is going to be heading back to the U.S. in a big way. Now, what will happen then? Who knows? Some of the speculation is that anything that's denominated in U.S. dollars right now, so any kind of commodity that's traded in U.S. dollars, because the dollars themselves now, basically the gig is up when it comes to all the printing and all the borrowing at almost zero cost. The gig's up on that, and so people are going to say, well, the U.S. dollar really is worthless, and now it's time to get rid of all that, and we want to trade that in for valuable, durable commodities while we still can. So some of the talk is that money will be coming back to the U.S., and and that money will be traded in for businesses, for raw goods, for anything really of value. So that's going to be interesting. Now, for us in Canada, it's going to be very interesting again to see what kind of effects that'll have on us. Now, presumably, as the US dollar drops, Canada, being a commodity-based economy, if our federal government will get out of the way, the Canadian dollar will likely go up, as the US dollar goes down. But we're going into kind of uncharted territory now, because now we're going to be getting into a point where, at some point down the road, where you're going to have currencies that are going to be basically traded against each other instead of traded basically against the US dollar. So I don't know enough about that. I've got to do some more reading on that to see just how that would work. But that could get very interesting. Now, with Canada having a huge, vast store of resource wealth in this country, we could do fairly well. We have a lot of resources that the world needs, and we just need to have a government in place that will allow us to sell it. I think that a lot of countries around the world are now realizing that, hey, we had the luxury of concerning ourselves with all these various social, programs of social good and all that wonderful stuff in the past. Now people have to worry about heating and eating. And I think that people are going to be more concerned with that than they are going to be with various alphabetical social programs. So we'll see how that works out. So that continues to be interesting. Oh, also I read this morning, Japan, they bought a shipment of LNG or oil, and it was above the cap price to trade with Russia. I think the cap price, I think it was oil, the cap price is $60 US, and I guess Japan decided, well, we need it, so we got to pay for it, and they traded for higher than the cap price. So that was an article that I saw this morning. The global order is changing right before our eyes, and everybody now is going to be jockeying for some kind of position in it all, and we don't know what this is all going to look like. Now, in the past, the US has not really taken very kindly to countries that wanted to trade outside of the US dollar, and for very good reason. Very good reason for America, because the monopoly or the status of the US dollar as the primary reserve currency of the world is key for the US to be able to spend and generate deficits as it has, and by extension have the military reach that it did. Now, without the US as the primary reserve currency, well, it's too early to say right now exactly how this is going to turn out. But with that status under threat, that is going to pose some very interesting challenges, and we're kind of going into some uncharted territory here. So I've definitely got to do a little more reading on it. So I'm interested in your comments on this. There are going to be some very big changes that come as a result of this, and we don't know what those changes are going to look like here in the next few years, but they're going to be sizable. This is kind of a seismic shift in the global economic order, I think. I don't know if I'm understating it by saying that. How the world's currency is generated and who generates it is massive. And if the BRICS countries are going to be coming up with an alternative reserve currency, that is going to change the game. And we're more than likely, if we don't go into a World War III over it, then we're more than likely going to evolve into kind of a multipolar world where you'll have various regions of the world will just kind of look after their own backyard, and the US won't be the world's police, basically the world's police force anymore. What that will look like will be very interesting. It's going to be something very different, and very few people alive today are going to know what that looks like. So I've used the word interesting many times in this, and it's for good reason, because I think that things are going to be very interesting. We live in interesting times. So interested in your thoughts on that? Leave your comments below. I'll link to the articles and to some other things that I think of after posting this video. I'll link to that below. And in the meantime, you all take care. See you next time, and bye for now.
'Cause the best of the free life is still yet to come. The good times ain't over for good.